This time on Rat and Cat, a conversation with the mother of Glenn Austin Oldfield, a man who went missing here in Skamania County in 2016. Welcome to Rat and Cat, where we search for those who have gone missing so others can learn how to survive. I'm Nakia. Over the last few years of searching for Austin Oldfield, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about searching, about why people go missing, and I've learned a lot about Austin Oldfield and how things cannot be what they, or may not be what they seem like to begin with. Now, to be fair, when I started out, I tried to get more information about Austin Oldfield, but because it's an ongoing investigation, he hasn't been found, there's a lot of information that I still don't have and can't get. That's why I decided to go out searching for him, and that's the only thing I could do, is just look. And that's what I started doing, and then information started coming in. And my belief and understanding of what has happened has changed significantly over the past couple of years. And I think over the last 24 hours has changed even more. That's because Billie Oldfield, Austin's mother, reached out to me, and we had a phone call earlier today, and I think there's some real misperceptions about Austin and just some new details that are available now that weren't then when we first started out looking and when he first went missing. And I wanted to share a conversation with you with Billie Oldfield, and so I'm going to get her on the phone in just a minute so you can hear just what she has to say. On the phone right now, I've got Billie Oldfield here. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. It was so good to talk with you earlier today, and I know that there's a lot of, in our previous conversation, there's some things that you wanted to clear up about Glenn Oldfield, and just a lot of new information that I don't have. Tell me about that.
Well, first I'd like to say, Nakia, that I just wanted to say thank you for all you've done. I just appreciate it more than I can say. Regarding Austin, there's so many things that have been wrong. Talking about him as a person, Austin was such a wonderful son, and just, you know, the kind of person that didn't draw attention but did what he could for anyone. And he just was a great son. He's very smart. You know, helped anyone he could. Mm-hmm. And he lived here with me most of the time when he wasn't traveling or someplace else, and we just had a good relationship.
Now, I know that some people have commented, and it kind of looks like he was on drugs, but you say you don't think that's the case.
I know it's not the case, because Austin wouldn't even drink coffee. He wouldn't drink tap water. He wouldn't eat anything that had a lot of preservatives in it. He was kind of a health nut. I'm not saying he wouldn't on occasion smoke pot, but I don't see that as a real harmful drug. And you know, he didn't do drugs because of the job that he had. You know, he had to sort of be on his toes. He worked in electronics all day, and he just said, if you don't get the right amount of sleep and take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to do your job. And all that I read just was kind of surprising to me. I don't know how. I don't even know how it got on there.
Mm-hmm. And he just had a job, like a new job, right?
No, he'd been there 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Had he quit the job when he came out here to the Northwest, or what was the situation?
His boss said that he had looked 8 years to find someone that could pick up on what Austin knew about electronics, and if Austin wanted to take a month off and go on a camping trip, he was gonna let him do that. He didn't mind at all, and that's why Austin went. He got a whole month off from work.
What else was he like?
But he was always very quiet. He played the guitar a lot, and he played in some bands here in Louisville, and played lead guitar usually. And he loved anything that had to do with computers. He was certified with Microsoft and 2 different certifications. And by the time he was 12, he'd already won a scholarship to Duke University. So we were really proud of Austin. He was a good son and a polite, kind person. It wouldn't surprise anything to see, or anyone to see Austin just sit down and talk to a homeless person on the street and help him if he could. He's just a sweetheart.
You were telling me that there was another reason why you don't think he would have just run off, that there was something important to him that he left there.
Yeah, Austin, I don't think Austin would have stayed away from me, but he had a dog that someone gave him when he was just a pup. Just Austin said he could fit him in his hand, and he raised this dog, and he was about 8 years old, and wherever Austin went, this dog went, and he built a rack on his motorcycle where this dog could ride in front or in back, and he rode everywhere Austin went. And he just would not have, it's the first time I've ever seen Austin go on a trip and not take Flash, because his girlfriend talked him into leaving him with her, and he did, but he said he regretted it. And I don't think he'd leave that dog for anything.
Well, and I'm going to jump back with one question that we didn't talk about. What led you to contact me now?
When you did your very first video, I noticed I had never seen it because I just started farther up in that one, and I went back to pick up on the ones I hadn't seen. This was probably a month ago, and I noticed some clothes that I thought might be Austin's in the first video near the end of it. And this is where he was let out after being picked up in the forest by the girl and her father. And I thought those could be Austin's because they talked like Austin was so out of it from dehydration that he just wasn't acting right. And I don't know, I just felt like when I listened to what they had to say that I just don't know how he could have found his way anywhere else, because where he was not a good place to find food or shelter or someone to help him.
Yeah. There was one other thing too I was curious about that just a couple weeks ago. It sounds like your local police department asked for some DNA samples. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did. A detective called me and asked me to come down to the police station to do a DNA, and I did. And I was wondering where that came from. Did they know something, but we're not sharing it? And then they're also going to do a DNA of Austin's father.
It does seem... Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it just makes me wonder after all this time, they want a DNA now.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, if they found something that they want to match up with. Interesting. Yeah, so jumping back forward to his campsite in his car, because they released his vehicle after a year, and what was in his vehicle?
What was in his vehicle was pretty much everything he left here with that came to camping out, and some rations that he had put in there that would stay, like anything canned, and bottled water. Of course, he probably bought that after he got there, but all his gear, you know, he had a solar charger for his phone that, you know, you don't have electricity, you can charge it with the sun. And he had a fire starter in the car, and you know, just a lot of gear, sleeping bags and binoculars and things that you normally take on a camping trip. And they were there, and they were not disturbed. The only thing that, well, the sleeping bag was came back with the car, but the food and all that was still there.
Were any of the water bottles opened?
No, but they were gallon jugs of water. He could have bought those anywhere, but the sheriff in Skamania County, is that the name of the county?
Yeah.
He said that he didn't believe Austin spent a night at his campsite. He went into the forest on September the 17th, 2015. He was supposed to come out October the 1st and call his girlfriend. And October 1st, he didn't call, and by the 2nd of October, she had alerted the sheriff. And the sheriff, you know, started, by the third day, by the 3rd of October, they had started to put together a search team. And that's what they did. They started a search party and looking for him.
And so a year passes, and then they get a call from a couple of people who happened to pick somebody that looks like Austin up on the 19th, you said. Is that right?
On the 19th of October.
That yeah. After they'd seen posters, missing posters of him.
Well, actually, no, they didn't. Austin was on a trail when they passed, and I've heard that he flagged him down. It was a man and his daughter, and they took Austin to a place, Indian berry picking fields, something like that, and he was very not acting right at all. He was seeing things that weren't there, and all he told them was that he was from Kentucky, and he didn't tell them that he had been lost in the woods or that he had a campsite there and a car. But he had been, at that time when they picked him up on the 19th of October, he had actually been in the forest for 31 days.
Wow.
And without any water, without any food, without any way to make a fire. You know, unless he was able to do that on his own. But I don't know if that's possible in a forest. It's probably damp near the ground, but I don't know. But for 31 days, Austin survived the wilderness with nothing.
Wow, that is amazing for anybody. And so we've got this picture on the one hand that seems like that it looks like somebody who's a crazy guy coming out of the woods on drugs, but actually it's kind of a professional that is that actually knows a little bit about camping, not so much the wilderness, but somehow survives for 30 days in the woods. And I mean, if a person was on drugs, I don't think they'd have 30 days supply of drugs, a 30-day supply. That would be incredible to survive that long.
Yeah, and what would a starving person without water and sleep, and what would they think? They won't be thinking about drugs. They'll be thinking about surviving.
Yeah, I want to drop back here. There, he had foil around his iPad. His car was all ratty. He has a big bushy beard. He kind of looks homeless. Tell me about that.
Austin had decided to let his beard grow, but everybody tried to get him to shave, and he probably would have shaved if there had been so many people telling him to shave. I don't know, but that's just the way he wanted to look. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. He wanted, his main goal in life was he loved the job he had, and he loved working on computers and building amps and playing the guitar and anything that had to do with that kind of stuff. He really enjoyed it. So he might have looked like a bum, but he wasn't a bum. And I was really sorry to see all that on the internet.
And you'd actually had a conversation about wrapping the iPad just because he wanted privacy. Is that right?
He wanted privacy and no one to hack into his computer or whatever. I told him, I said, well, you could always wrap aluminum foil around it. And that's what I do with my phone sometimes if I just want to make sure that no one can get into it. I mean, I read that on the internet, and I told him about it, and he said, I might try that. So I gave him some aluminum foil, and I guess that's what he did. Maybe to, it's kind of reasons of his own, but that does block out any of your signals coming into it.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I read.
So the people that picked him up said that they thought in the truck after 31 days in the truck said that something wasn't right. Tell me what you know about that.
Well, when you pick someone up in the middle of the forest and they look like Austin did, he had the same clothes on for a month, for 31 days. And they picked him up, his beard was shaggy and he looked terrible, I'm sure he did. And he was talking out of his head, he wasn't coherent. He was saying things like, I need to catch that red balloon because at the end of the string is a magic ship. And I need to be taken to a large body of water so my friends can pick me up in a plane. And they didn't think anything was wrong with that. I mean, he didn't really tell them where he was coming from right then, that he had a campsite, that he had a car, that he had been lost for a month. Either they didn't ask or he didn't say, but he had to come from somewhere. Why didn't someone ask? Why take him to where they left him off at the berry picking fields? I don't know. With no food, no water, no provisions for someone who just came out of the woods, whether they knew if he'd been there a month or not. I think I would have been a little more concerned than just dropping him off.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were talking about that earlier, and I think one thing that's made me have a different perspective on this, or on missing people, is a lot of comments that I've gotten on the channel about, well, why don't you move on and search for somebody else? This is just somebody that's on drugs. And I think that that's something that misdirects us, and maybe there's a lot of people that could be helped when we just discount them as on drugs, and there's actually something else that's going on, and being dehydrated can make a person hallucinate, and especially if you've been out there for 31 days, who knows what you'd be like.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's amazing that he was there at all. It's amazing that he was ever seen again. I can't even imagine 31 days without any light, without any water unless you can find a stream, and without any food unless you can pick berries. And can you imagine what it's like in the middle of the night in the forest, all the sounds you hear, and that you don't have a way to make a campfire? You can't see your hand in front of your face. And I was told that when he got out of the truck that he started chasing the red balloon and trying to catch the string. And he was running to the left and running to the right, and it just, that would have alerted me if someone had done that, that something's wrong with this person, more than just dehydration. This might be a life-changing event that I'm thinking, maybe we should take him somewhere where he can get some help.
Yeah.
So I just don't know why that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. I think that it's, like I said, there's so many times and situations. There's a lot of people that use drugs at one level or another. A lot of it's recreational, and I think even drugs aside, there's a lot of other things, stupid things that people do. And I think it's interesting in society how we just discount that. And one reason people take drugs, and I'm not saying this is the case, sometimes it's just recreational, but a lot of seriously mentally ill people and are actually dealing and self-medicating with these drugs because it's drugs that they can get and somehow help them. And it may not seem like it to us. And I have a friend who is a doctor and a psychologist, and we were having a conversation about this and how a lot of people are actually literally self-medicating when they take drugs. And I think it's actually one of the biggest reason that people go missing in the wilderness, and I've been meaning to do a segment on that, and it could be the number one cause for people going missing in the wilderness or in general, is just the lack of proper mental health care. And I don't know, I'm not saying that Austin needed mental health care. I just don't know that, but
I'm sure he needed it when he came out, because I've read stories now that say that you don't have to stay but a week, and you're mentally affected for life. Some people are mentally affected for life.
Mm-hmm.
And Austin was in there for 30 days and acted exactly like someone on drugs, which there were no drugs. You act the same way when you're extremely dehydrated, and that's what Austin was. He was severely dehydrated, and that's very dangerous. But it affects your ability to think clearly.
Yeah. You went to the Tri-Cities this last fall in September to look for Austin.
Yes, I did. I went there because I watched your video about going to the Tri-City area and where you rode the bus, and I was determined to go and maybe show his picture and visit some places if he was there and homeless and not able to think clearly that he might be. And I stayed out there 8 days, and every day I went as many places as I could, and it was an experience that I'll never forget. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot how people they did an article in the paper, and people reached out and made phone calls and volunteered to help me, and it was very kind and very enlightening.
Do you have any regrets about going there?
No, not at all. I would go anywhere if I thought there was even a chance that I could do anything to find him. There's just no limit, nothing. Austin's such a wonderful person.
Yeah.
I just love him.
Did you have a gut feeling about what has happened to Austin or Glenn?
Well, I've read all these things on the internet, and you kind of, he's my son, and I know what he would be thinking, but is he thinking clearly enough to know anything. If Austin's alive and is thinking clearly, he would definitely have called home. He would not have left his dog Flash, who he loved dearly. Never spent a night away from the time that dog was born. And he would not have not called me, because he lived here, and came and went as he pleased. He lived in the pool house and had it locked up. It was his place, and there's no reason Austin would have left to stay gone. He just would not have done that. That's not who Austin is. And I don't think about that. I think if Austin is possibly alive, he's not thinking clearly. He's not thinking clearly at all. And I think if Austin is not alive, I think he's somewhere near where they dropped him off. That's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
He was dropped off near the berry picking field.
Yeah. Well, and there's still... Oh, go ahead.
Well, because from their description of when they let him out of the truck and he started running, trying to catch the red balloon. And, you know, just, it's so sad to think that he was that out of it. And then just left there. There's no business there. There's no restaurant. There's no place that you can get food, and there's no place that you can get shelter, spend the night, get help, make a phone call. He didn't have his phone with him. It was still in his car, so he had no options, really.
Yeah.
So, hard to think about.
Well, and those could have even been stages of hypothermia. I'm not sure how cold it was at that specific time, but probably more... It didn't look like it was cold enough. Although in the evenings it could have been cold enough for hypothermia. I don't know how somebody survived with just a jacket and 45 degrees, 45 or 42, I think, even 39-degree temperatures that time of year in October and September.
Well, you know, I called the radio stations and looked up on the internet, and for the whole month of October, it was unseasonably warm. So that was a godsend to Austin, because he did just have a jacket, not a real heavy jacket, but that's all he had. And it could have been much worse because it was unseasonably warm.
Wow.
I don't know what unseasonably warm is at nighttime, but it could have been 45 degrees at nighttime.
Yeah, I think that's because it's pretty high up there. Usually when I've been up there, and when I've camped up there, it's about 39, and I think I'd heard 45 was what it was, but it would not be uncommon for 39 or even colder, freezing at night a lot of times. But also I want to touch on that Pamela, Austin's sister, has a Facebook page that we've mentioned several times on this channel, and I'll put a link on that in the description of this video below.
That would be great. Thank you.
You know, and I think one of the big lessons is just, if you're out there in the wilderness, don't pass by people who seem to be acting strange. People who have hypothermia will often cross the road, and they're, you know, and they'll seem coherent a little bit, but if things seem fishy, if they don't have all their gear with them, and they can't tell where they're from or who they are, and they're just not making sense, don't let them go. You know, I mean, you can't stop them physically, but try to get them to go with you, or at least make a note of it and contact local authorities, because that's a serious situation out there.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Err on the side of safety if you can.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share right now?
No, I don't have anything really right now. I just, you know, Austin's posters out there, and it's probably exactly how he looks right now with the beard. And if anyone sees him, you know, just call the number on the poster, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or the local police.
Yeah. Yes.
If you think you even see him, because he may not be able to be very helpful.
How long had he had a beard?
Oh, off and on for, gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before he went on the camping trip.
Mm-hmm.
He would shave it off every now and then, but and he's such a handsome guy. I always said, you're hiding your face, and that's your biggest asset. And he would just laugh at me, but I don't know why he grew that beard, but he did. I think because he had so many people telling him to shave it.
Also, he looked in a car. The car was all ratty and torn apart on the inside. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, Nakia, he bought the car from a lady who bought it new, and a friend of his, and he was going to redo. He took the headliner out of it and had the seats worked on, and he found it has it had a few things like a hail damage on the hood, and he found a hood that he was replacing that with, and just redoing the car, and then probably turn around and sell it, because he had his own truck, and then he has a van, so he really didn't need another vehicle. But he kind of liked that little car, but he was in the process of just fixing it up. I know it looked terrible, but that he had just gotten it maybe a month before.
It's really interesting. It's really quite a strong story of perceptions and what looks like one thing, where you've got this, it kind of looks like one of the, because there are a lot of hobos and people that will just live out in the woods, and or not just in the woods, they're just constantly moving around, and it kind of looks like that, and people associated him with the rainbow gathering.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he was a lot more, a really pretty stable person.
He was very stable, and very much into progressing his education, and he just got licensed to be a two-way radio. I forgot what you call it. Like a CD radio, ham operator. That's what I'm trying to say. Licensed to be a ham operator, and that was pretty hard test, because he was telling me about it. He had to study for a while for it. You wouldn't think it is, but I don't know what all it entails. It may mean you can work on them, or I don't know. That was just another one of his hobbies. And then he made really high quality amps for people, and he made the little ones where they could carry them around and play the guitar on, through the amps. And so he stayed busy doing those things, but he was quite a private person. He didn't like anyone going into the pool house, because he kept it locked up, and he knew where everything was. And he'd always say, "Mom, if you go in there, and I can't find something, then I'm going to come to you and ask you, where's this or where's that?" Anyway, he was just he's like most people that work on electronics. They like to have their space, private space.
Mm-hmm. And so, as you were saying, that he would often stay in the pool house when he'd come over and visit.
I've been here 25 years, and that's always been his place. He always had the only key to it, and he knew when he left that whatever he had there was going to be exactly where he left it. And, it was a good place that he knew the things that he liked and wanted to be left alone, they would be, because that's the way he wanted it. People that work on detail things like that have to have a space that they can store their stuff and leave it and come back where it's exactly the way they left it, because otherwise you'd be starting over all the time, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way he wanted it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for talking today and sharing this story. I know a lot of people have wanted to hear this on my channel, and you have so much information that I don't have about this situation, and it's been just really good getting your perspective.
You're welcome, again. If you need to call me again, just feel free to do so.
All right, thanks a lot.